Church, 717 North Liberty Street.
Where do you live, ma'am?
I live in Freedom Park area, 525 Fairdown Road. But that is our church. Our pastor is busy, he couldn't be here. The deacon's here. One of the deacons is here. But we would just like to be excluded from it. They had a grandson and they have matched some of these things that they wanted done. That would make a great big difference. But the money that it would take to make it what it should be, or what the people think it should be, we just can't do that right now. At first it was excluded, but we just learned by somebody else that it was in there. So we just like to be excluded from it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else like to speak in opposition of it?
I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing.
All in favor? We'll take into consideration all these comments, and thank you for coming out tonight. That's what democracy is all about. Everyone being heard.
Council has any questions or need for additional information, we would ask that you let staff know, let me know, and we'll consider appropriate follow-up for that. But our schedule would be, in absence, would be to bring this back at the second meeting, second meeting in April, with the first reading consideration of the ordinance that would make the designation. There would be no public hearing schedule. It would be first reading consideration of the ordinance. So this gives us time. You can give us, if there's questions tonight you have, we'd be glad to try to answer, or if you would any time up until then.
Okay. I'd like to ask that we delay this vote until we've looked at all of the pictures and everything that has been presented, and get a little bit more information in terms of what is it there, the second meeting?
Second meeting is the 22nd of April.
Also, Stan, I'd like to ask you, will that affect any, them giving their designation if we postpone to the second meeting?
No, it will not. They have a year of when they originally put on the pending list, so we're good up until.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we.
Well, you don't need a motion. We're waiting on a vote on it tonight. No vote tonight.
Okay.
You got up to a year to bring it back. Before it goes in. Yes.
I'd like to ask a question for clarification. One of the presenters mentioned a number of, I believe, 6%, and if there's if Ms. Monroe could clarify the number, I thought that it was 60%.
Yes, that's correct. The number is not 6, but 60% that had voted in favor.
Thank you.
How many people voted?
I don't have that information. Well, you can see. I have that written down there. I believe the number was about, do you remember, Mr. Settles, was it about 80 in the 80s?
I think that was
Like
right.
84,
Everybody had an
85.
opportunity to vote. They could either come to the meeting or they could mail their ballot in. And we had an outside team that counted the ballots. It wasn't anybody out of the association.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I?
Yes.
How many residents are in? I heard earlier 319.
309
309.
are residential units. The total properties is 319. So 309 are residential units, and I can give you the exact number here. It's on the second page. We have 3 that are institutional uses, which are churches, 2 parking lots, 5 vacant lots, and 309 residential units, totaling 319 properties on the pending list.
And what's the percentage of the number of voters to let this go before the board to be approved?
Sorry, say that again. From the neighborhood or from the code? What the code requires?
Code.
Well, it's only 10 citizens that our zoning ordinance requires for any property to be considered on the pending list. You can just have 10 city residents can present that to the HARB or city council or the property owner.
Why was the churches not included on the first one?
I will turn that over to the ones that have more knowledge. That'll be Martin Meek and Joshua Henderson has worked more on this, so they can help explain that. And if you can step up to the.
We first excluded the churches, because we did feel that they tend to maintain their properties. Their properties have really not changed in their history. So when we got into the workshops, some of the HAR board members were very adamant that they wanted them included into the guidelines. So at that point, we said we'll include them and keep the boundary a constant area. The churches do play a great part in the historical fabric of that neighborhood. So culturally, they are important to the neighborhood. But churches have a tendency to maintain and have a little higher level of maintenance than some, say, rental properties would.
What was the reasoning of the park?
Again, they wanted them included because they're in the historic context of the neighborhood. It's pretty much a preservation purism.
So you don't see any problem going back and excluding them if that's the part they wish?
I do not see a problem with excluding.
Martin, some of the residents who indicated they did not want to be part of the preservation, historical makeup as well. Is there a problem if they do not want to be part of it, to not include it?
To not include the churches.
No, not the church, residents.
Residential properties. Really, the context of the neighborhood, the important thing is the preservation of the residential context. That's the element that's going to have the highest level of change and really needs to be. We've structured these guidelines to be more flexible. Already we've experienced, we've made more approvals in minor works, just because these guidelines do have more flexibility in them.
So, in essence, are you saying that they can or cannot be excluded?
I would not exclude them. I would keep the integrity of the residential properties together.
You know, like one of the ladies said that if they decide to put siding on their houses, and you know, in the early 1900s, there was no siding, so could they do that?
There are alternative materials that are not as expensive. 9 times out of 10, we don't recommend going back with wood. The wood that we get today is not the quality of the wood we had 100 years ago. We use alternate materials such as hardy board, which is a breathable siding. It is sympathetic with the wood structures, where aluminum and vinyl actually traps moisture behind it. So there are alternative materials that are about the same cost as aluminum and vinyl. So there are materials out there, and we mentioned those in our guidelines, that they're acceptable.
Mr. Meek, the home built in 1965, the ranch, would you feel that same way about that structure?
That property really is out of the period of significance. That property is not. It's
So essentially,
significant.
it could be excluded.
Yes, it could. Could be excluded.
Speak. I know the heart is not here to speak. In terms of your question, one of the other reasons I think in terms of that ranch that is not kind of out of the significance, I think is they're thinking if for some reason they ever tear that down, then there's guidelines in place so that the new construction would be designed under the current guidelines. Without that, they wouldn't have any guidelines. That was, I think, one of the reasons why HARB had wanted to put the property on, the church property, range we're talking about.
Any house that's already been remodeled would be grandfathered in, is that correct?
Well, yes, any house that's remodeled